Right now at 6, a drug dealer convicted for selling the fentanyl that killed a Hillsborough teen.
And these cases can be difficult to investigate and to prosecute.
What made it possible to secure a guilty verdict and justice? Plus, it's primary eve in Oregon. So why does turnout so far appear sluggish?
Feels like people don't really care about things that are happening that could directly affect them.
And later, the sheriff's office has a brand new recruit.
I can just pet this dog and it kind of takes away the problems for a minute.
Why Multnomah County deputies say Burton will make a big difference. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko. We begin at 6 with a rare manslaughter conviction for a drug dealer accused of selling fentanyl pills to a Hillsborough teenager who overdosed and died. Blair Best is in the newsroom with details on this case. Blair?
David, there have only been 2 other cases in Oregon where a drug dealer was convicted for causing an overdose death. Oregon law makes it incredibly difficult for investigators to prove the dealer is at fault. Today we sat down with Washington County District Attorney on why this case was different.
This is 21-year-old Yaida Leyva Noriega. Last week, a Washington County judge found him guilty of second-degree manslaughter for selling fentanyl pills to a 17-year-old in Hillsborough.
And that 17-year-old ultimately overdosed on those fentanyl pills.
Kevin Barton is the Washington County District Attorney. His team prosecuted this case.
And these cases can be difficult to investigate and to prosecute for obvious reasons. You have to demonstrate, how that person received the pills, who gave it to them.
They also have to prove the dealer was aware of the risks of the drug. Investigators in this case found text messages where the dealer warned the teen to, quote, take it slow because he had put, quote, good money into that batch of fentanyl.
There's evidence to be able to prove that the drug dealer was recklessly acting, that the drug dealer was aware of that risk and consciously disregarded that risk. And that's what distinguishes this particular case from so many others where we aren't able to proceed forward with manslaughter charges.
It's a rare verdict and one that's only happened now 3 times in Oregon. Unlike other states, Oregon does not have a crime that specifically addresses drug dealers who cause overdose deaths.
We're using yesterday's tools to address today's problem.
Barton and his team continue to work with the state legislature to reform laws to make it easier to prosecute drug dealers. But he hopes the outcome of this case will send a message to people like Noriega.
We need to prosecute and go after drug dealers to be able to address this issue from both sides of the coin.
Noriega was sentenced to 75 months in prison, which will run consecutively to a prior domestic violence sentence of 13 months. So he'll spend a total of a little more than 7 years behind bars. David?
And Blair, the victim here again, just 17 years old. Thank you. In your headlines this evening, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has now identified a woman it says fell to her death while hiking in the gorge Sunday afternoon. Authorities say 22-year-old Alicia Macias of Hillsborough was hiking with 5 of her friends at Horsetail Falls. Apparently, Macias became separated from the group and went off the trail before she fell 50 to 60 feet. Other hikers tried to perform CPR before rescue crews arrived, but were not able to save her. She is the 2nd hiker to die in the gorge this year near Horsetail Falls. In Corvallis, Oregon State University officials have ordered people at a pro-Palestinian encampment that popped up on campus last week to leave. Administrators say if students don't go by tonight, they could be held liable for code of conduct violations. Students say they set up the camp because administrators ignored requests to discuss their demands, including OSU divesting from Israeli companies. Meanwhile, in Eugene, a pro-Palestinian protest at the University of Oregon stretched into its 22nd day. 5 students who have changed themselves to the front of the administration building have not moved there since Thursday. Well, a big name in running shoes is opening up shop in Portland's Goose Hollow neighborhood. Hoka Footwear will move into the Canvas office building that's right across the street from Providence Park. Though the California-based company has been a little bit tight-lipped on the details, we know it's signed a lease to take over 3 floors of the building.
Portland's real estate market, its talent availability, and established footwear industry make it an ideal location for any company to expand into the Portland market.
Well, this location was previously the site of the Oregonian newspaper's printing facility. And new data shows Oregon's tourism spending has rebounded to pre-pandemic levels, netting a record $14 billion in the state last year. That's according to the Oregon Tourism Commission. It says the travel and tourism industry created more than 2,000 jobs last year, now fully making up the loss of 25,000 jobs in 2020. Nearly 60% of visitor spending came from people from other states. More than 35% came from Oregonians traveling in-state. However, international travelers made up less than 5% of travel spending, about half of what the state saw in 2019. Matt?
All right, David, thanks very much. We started the week with beautiful weather, and of course, it's still going on. Here's the Reserve Golf Course. Sunny, 67. Temperatures made it up to about 70, already beginning to back off just a bit. Out at the coast, still sunny there, 57 at Astoria. Northwest winds, the onshore flow, which will be increasing tomorrow. And tomorrow is going to be a much different day as we get the rain rolling back on in. And you know what? We're still a little bit above average for a monthly rainfall total. But if we didn't get any more rain, we'd end up with below average rainfall for the month. So we'll see how much we can get over the next couple of days. Temperatures, though, right about average today, which was kind of great. So rain will set in tomorrow, continue into Wednesday, but we'll get a lot of dry time Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday begins dry. I know, we're kind of ... on that, right? So let's look ahead at the Memorial Day weekend forecast, and it looks pretty good after the beginning. Wet weather setting in on Friday and early Saturday, then those showers end. Saturday is a cool day, but we make up for it on Sunday, sunny and 68, and even warmer on Monday. We're up around 70. So all in all, I think a lot of people will be happy with the 3-day weekend. It's just going to start a little bit wet, a little bit cool. David?
Well, it sounds fairly promising. Thank you, Matt. Now at 6, the family of a Portland woman allegedly murdered by her fiancé in January gathered today to put the spotlight on domestic violence. Daisy Caballero has their message to the community.
Justice for Jeannie! You can hear it loud and clear.
Love should not hurt!
This is the message Jeannie Inyurt's family and friends are sharing outside the Multnomah County Justice Center and bringing awareness to domestic violence.
We've been best friends since we were 12.
Larissa Spillman is still in disbelief, not knowing the heartbreaking truth her best friend was living.
It was honestly quite shocking to find out after she was murdered that he had been abusing her.
Back in January, Jeannie was found lifeless in the trunk of her car in Skamania County, Washington. Her fiancé, John French, was arrested days later and is now facing charges of murder and abuse of a corpse.
We want justice for the person that took her life. And we also want to spread awareness for domestic abuse and all the different forms of domestic abuse.
Kristen Eddy is Jeannie's younger sister and started noticing signs that things were going right around December. So they reached out.
She reassured us that everything was okay, but I think that's who Jeannie was. You know, I feel like she wanted whatever he was going through, she wanted to help him.
Jeannie leaves behind her 3 siblings, 2 children, and a 6-month-old grandson, who they all considered her the glue of the family.
No, I never thought that she would be in this position. You know, she was a loving mother for me and my sister for 20 years.
Her son Antonio shares he lived with Jeannie and French about a month before her murder and called for a wellness check when she went missing. But unfortunately, it was too late.
And for the family to hear about this and go through this is just it's unreal.
In downtown Portland, Daisy Caballero, KGW News.
Meanwhile, court records show French is scheduled for a hearing tomorrow that will determine whether he is fit to stand trial. A reminder this evening, if you or someone you know needs help, know that there are resources out there for domestic violence survivors. You can call this number, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 24/7. It's 800-799-7233. You can also text 88788. Well, we are one day out from the Oregon primary with ballots due by 8 tomorrow evening, though compared to years past at this point, turnout is looking, shall we say, a little bit light. Thomas Schultz is live at the Multnomah County Elections Division. Thomas, hopefully the drop box there is getting a little bit more action today, but put this all into perspective for us.
Yeah, well, David, we're starting to see people creep in one by one and drop their ballots off, but so far, just around 18% of voters in Multnomah County have either mailed in their ballot or dropped it off on locations like this one here. And election officials think it's going to be pretty slim this go-round. They say just about a third of voters are going to participate in these May elections, which include big races, like the district attorney race between current DA Mike Schmidt and prosecutor Nathan Vasquez. There's also, of course, several county commission seats up for grabs, and this election cycle is a big contrast from 4 years ago, when Multnomah County election officials say 51% of voters sent in ballots for those May elections. Still, statewide, the Secretary of State's office reports just 26% of Democrats, 28% of Republicans have voted so far, which is disappointing to some Portlanders.
It's disappointing because it feels like people don't really care about things that are happening that could directly affect them.
Every time I get an opportunity to vote and express my opinion on how things should go, then I want to do that.
Now, Multnomah County election officials think there are a couple reasons turnout is low. The first is the presidential primaries are already wrapped up this year, which just wasn't the case 4 years ago. The second, Portland contests have now moved to November, and turnout is expected to ramp up, of course, today and tomorrow. We're starting to see that, people driving in or dropping off their ballots as well. And already today, there's been a relatively bigger turnout in comparison. More than 20,000 people have voted in Multnomah County. David?
Well, somewhat encouraging. 8 o'clock tomorrow for the drop boxes, right, or postmarked by tomorrow. Thomas Schultz in Southeast Portland there. Hey, by the way, KGW will have you covered on election night. I'll be here along with Laurel Porter and our political panel breaking down the results live as they come in. Our coverage begins at 7:45. You can watch it on channel 8.2 if you get our signal old school on an antenna. It's also available on Comcast channel 308. Of course, we'll be streaming the show on KGW Plus, the KGW YouTube channel, and KGW.com. Hope to see you then.